Commercial Grand Master and Part of Lodge.
Thank you, Brother Grand Secretary. Brethren, first of all, I'd like to thank you for coming out this evening for this Emergent Communications Grand Lodge. It is quite important that we meet this evening to discuss some of the important issues and finances that we're handling here at our Grand Lodge that you need to be made aware of. These issues, my brothers, go back a long time. And just to start off with a little bit of history, current issues that we see as far as our auditors are concerned go back to about 2007. And the problems have been that, and I'll explain to you why in a few seconds, but the problems have been that we have the budget and the money of the revenue that comes in and the money of expenditures, obviously the expenditures that exceed the revenue. And there's an issue with that. And I'll explain to you that in a minute. Prior to 2017, we were doing quite well. There was enough money in the cash account, the investments, that could cover the old budget. Matter of fact, I just read some proceedings going back then, back to like the 1980s, 83, 84, in which they were discussing similar things as we are going to be discussing this evening. But the cash amount from the revenue, which was from the investments and so forth, was high enough that it would cover it. From 2007, as the economy's changed, and we started eating up that cash reserve, all right, we started having some issues. And we started to borrow money from the pastor. The way that we're going to handle this evening, and I want to make sure that this is as educational for you and that you're involved as much in it, is that I'm going to give a short presentation of how we got there, and then I'm going to pass the mic over to the lawyer for the Grand Lodge trustees. You will hear from the president of the Grand Lodge trustees. You will hear from an attorney that we retained from the law firm of Carter and English, which is one of the most prominent law firms in the state that deals with taxation. And you will hear from him. Here today also we have the bookkeeper from the Grand Lodge. And the reason why, and also the elected line will speak. But most importantly of all, I want to assure you that there will be time at the end, before the end of this emergent communication, where we will open up the floor for questions from you, so that your questions may be answered, and your trip here will not be forsaken. So going back to 2007 and those years coming forward, we started to, the amount side, our cash flow started to deplete, we started to borrow. The problems, and I can't answer for what happened prior to my coming on to the elected line. But when I came onto the elected line, I saw that on the 990, there appears to be some numbers in which we owe the pastors through the temple, to the George Washington Memorial, to Rainbow, to DeMolay, and we owe money to the Sonic Charity Foundation. And we kept asking about it, I kept asking about it. If you look at online, and online you'll see on the Masonic, on the Grand Lodge webpage, the members only section, everything that I'm speaking about this evening, all the documentation, all the minutes that show what happened and how it transpired are up there for you to see if you have the time to go up there. And I will summarize it for you. We asked about what was going on. And by we, I meant the members of the elected line and the Grand Masters at the time. And the answers that we got one day was, yes, we owe this amount of money. And the following day, we got an answer, we don't owe anything. And if you look at those minutes, there are times in which Deputy Grand Master asked, what do we owe? And the money, the answer was, we're all paid up. So, we did not get accurate reports. There is no way that this elected line, any elected line, or any Grand Master can make a solid financial decision on how to spend the monies in their budget unless they have the correct figures. I can tell you right now that the men that sit here today as your Grand Lodge trustees, the men that sit here today, the brothers, as your elected line, have the best interest and the most passion for this fraternity to do things right. But they cannot do things right. They're spend in their budgets unless they have correct reports. Now, before I go into what happened possibly, let me say something to you to explain to you how this budget works and how we get ourselves in some situations. Last year, most worshipful Glenn Trotman proposed that we align the Grand Lodge year budget, okay, with the annual for the Grand Lodge, and that did not pass. But there was a reason for why I pushed for that and recommended it. And that is because if you look at the budget, which Right Worshipful Greg Scott is going to propose as his budget and bring to you in 2 weeks. That budget was put together last November, last December. That budget, the revenue that comes into it, is derived from membership numbers that existed last year. That budget, which is passed, the revenue collected from the membership, your dues, that is going to be passed in April, those monies are not going to be collected from the lodges until the dues of 2020. It won't go into effect then. Those monies that are collected through those dues and those pass-throughs, and for the revenue of this Grand Lodge in 2020, is not going to be paid out by the lodges until the annual assessment, the annual report for 2020 is handed in with a check. And that annual report is based on the membership. This will be based on the membership on December 31st of 2020. That's the reality. And that's been going on year after year after year. So what happens? In our decreasing membership, right now, he's been pretty good this year. This year, he's budgeted at 16,000 members, way below what we have. 500 members less. To anticipate a decrease in budget in the revenue. But there's no guarantee to that. Like I said in the past, we had a way, because we had more money inside of the cash account in order to cover that. We can, as the audit, and what we've done to try to correct some of the problems, as far as not knowing. During the minutes of during the Grand Lodge trustees meetings, it was brought up and it was asked, when were we informed of these things? Because the minutes that are public and that are out there that we have, by the way, it wasn't until May of this year that we started to actually, and I asked that actual minutes of the Grand Lodge be kept at the Grand Lodge office. Because the question was asked, does Grand Lodge, like we tell the lodges when we do an official visit of the lodges, when you look for your minutes and your financial of the lodge, was anything happening over at the Grand Lodge? The answer was no. Matter of fact, as far as when we're looking at the scholarship fund, okay, we were asking, well, how much money is there and who got the scholarships and is there a ledger? The answer was there's no ledger. Right? And so we instituted some changes. And the changes that we instituted to make things right was that, because before they were saying, and the bookkeepers here, he can answer you, the only information he got was from Beach Street, which was the old system. And he really only had information for the past 2 years he's been bookkeeping. He couldn't get real access to the prior information. So what we demanded now is that we have ledgers at Grand Lodge and that we keep minutes at Grand Lodge. And that's why up on the website, you now have your minutes. Another thing that we found out during the Grand Lodge meetings was that most of the business was conducted in an executive session. And to my surprise, no minutes were kept of the executive session. So there was no record the first time that the chairman of the audit committee met in person with the auditor. And because I felt it was necessary for the elected line and for the Grand Lodge trustees and the audit committee to get together with the auditor and the bookkeeper to ask the questions: is what do we owe? Where, because we kept on getting these conflicting numbers. What is it? Where do we stand financially? It wasn't there that we were afraid of the greatness and deepness of our challenges. At the end of April 30th, 2018, we owed the Masonic Charity Foundation $393,728,000 in past dues that were not paid. Now, there were a lot of other past dues that were paid in those years, in that year beforehand, to make it right. But that was the first time that the shock of this elected line and these Grand Lodge trustees of how bad this situation was. I then turned around to be fair to the current Grand Master coming up in 2 weeks. I wanted to make sure that he knew what the mud was now, even with me, because I wanted him to start off with a clean record. And for him, and for the trustees, and for you to know how I leave this year. And I found that in one of the solutions to making sure that these past dues went through the monies that you gave to these as a donation to these entities, got to where they were supposed to be going. I suggested and recommended to the board, they passed by a resolution at the last meeting, that we segregate the accounts. And the monies that go to the past dues go in one account, and the monies that go to the Grand Lodge go into another account. Well, as of March 15th, and I asked the bookkeeper to calculate for me, if I were to segregate that money and put all those past dues we've already collected through those annual reports and the home fees, in my year, from May 1st till now, okay, what would be the number? It would be an additional $264,823, and which will equal a total due of $658,551. So I said, well, we got the cash. Can we separate those accounts so that we know what was going into one account? We don't co-mingle the money that the Grand Lodge is supposed to use, so we know how much cash we have on hand to use. The answer was no. We're short still $93,000. So there are changes that are happening. There are going to be recommendations. What I can tell you is that the elected line and the board of trustees of both organizations, the Masonic Charity Foundation and the Grand Lodge, got together. And we're making some changes in the administration of how our finances are produced reports. Right? And they're going to be vended out under what we call the Shared Services Project, where they're going to be evaluated by the team, and we're going to pay them over to the Masonic Charity Foundation because they have a team of audit accountants that can do the job to give us accurate monthly reports so that these men know how much money they have to spend. I asked the auditor, and this is up on the Grand Lodge website. I said, her name is Donna, and she is from Donna Smith, CPA, from Sherwood, Petrie, Bronx, Snyder. They are CPAs with Voorhees, New Jersey. They're the ones who do the audit for us. And I asked them because I wanted to know. The reason why I wanted to know is because in order to fix the problems that we have, we got to understand how they occur. And we got to stop it. We got to correct it so they don't keep reoccurring. So I asked. And I said, good morning, Donna. This is an email dated March 13th. By the way, this is up online. You can see it up on the Grand Lodge website. In an effort to develop a plan to avoid future underpayments of our past dues, in particular, the Masonic Charity Foundation, I have 3 questions. Why did it take us so long to find out we owe this much money? If this is not the case, what can be done to change the process? Thank you. These are questions my membership is asking of me. Signed, Most Worship Roger Quintana, Grand Master. And she's answered back. The money owed to the Masonic Charity Foundation was not something found during the most recent audit. These payables have been on the Grand Lodge's balance sheet for several years now. And I'm not going to go through the amounts. You can read them up there. Because once the annual audit is complete, it is presented to the audit committee for review. After it is reviewed and approved, 10 copies of the final report are printed and mailed to the Grand Lodge for the Board of Trustee members. One copy is not bound, so that it may be photocopied as needed. As I said above, the fact that there was a payable due to the Masonic Charity Foundation has been on the balance sheet every year, even both in the unaudited, audited financial statements. All readers of financial statements would have been aware of this liability. One of our management recommendations is for the Board of Trustees to be presented with both the internally generated balance sheet and income statement at monthly meetings. That's exactly what I just said to you. Presenting just the income statement does not give a complete picture of the organization's financial position. By looking at the income statement, you don't know how much is owed to the organizations, nor what the organization's liabilities are. My brothers, in the 4 years that I have been on this elected line, I have the first time that I saw the independent audit statement was when we met with the auditor, and then when I looked at the proceedings, which were just mailed out not too long ago for 2016 annual communication with Grand Lodge, those audited proceedings were in there as well for 2016. But from 2016 till we met with the auditor 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we were constantly told, hey, we don't know money. Matter of fact, on one of those meetings, I didn't ask the trustees, when asked about the $150,000, some odd $200,000 that was out of the 990, where was that money? And did we owe money? We were told, oh, we don't know where that money was owed from. We have no idea. It was even proposed that we investigate, because no one knew. The next email I get from Donna says, Roger, the audits were approved by the members of the audit committee through the chairman of the committee. The audited financial statements are usually discussed via telephone conference call with the audit committee members and myself. Since I started performing the audit in 2009, there have been only 3 years where the meeting was held in person. Most were conducted via conference call. The management representation letters to the audits were signed by the Grand Secretary, or if he was not available, the Grand Lodge Administrator. 9 or 10 bound and 1 unbound copy of the audited financial statements were mailed annually to the attention of Brian Johnson once we received the signed management representation letter. Drafts of the Form 990s were sent to the Grand Secretary, the Grand Lodge Administrator, and the Grand Lodge Accountant each year. Once approval was received from the Grand Secretary and the Grand Lodge Administrator, the final and of the Form 990 was signed by Sheriff Petrie, audit partner, and mailed to the Grand Lodge for signature by the Grand Secretary. The Grand Lodge is then responsible for mailing the signed Form 990s to the IRS. For the fiscal years ending 4/30/15, the 990 was signed by, not going to mention any names, and it was an original signature. Beginning in the fiscal year ending 4/30/16, the Form 990 was electronically filed with the IRS. Approval of the draft Form 990 would come from the Grand Secretary and the Grand Lodge Administrator. Once the Form 990 was approved, I would electronically file it. So, brethren, what we're going to do to change this is that 990 before empty. It is now ordered and mandated that original two signatures be on every check. Now, the Grand Lodge trustees get the check register of all the checks issued, and all of the revenue coming in and the revenue going out will be independently audited by the shared services team over at the home, okay, which we're paying for to review to make sure that these issues don't occur again. The audited statements, and I will repeat that, but maybe I've already said it. Audited statements, once received from the audit committee, should be signed by the elected line and by the Grand Lodge trustees, showing that they are aware of the financial situations of this Grand Lodge. My brothers, we've got a very, very caring team. I've been with these men, obviously with Greg Longer and the rest of them, and with the senior Grand Warden, with the junior Grand Warden, and with these trustees. I've asked them about whether or not they remember receiving these copies of the audit. You can ask yourself. We had a meeting 2 weeks ago. I went around the table at the Grand Lodge trustees meeting, and the answer was absolutely not. These men care. These men have they want the best of this Grand Lodge. And I can assure you that there will be solutions proposed, and that we will definitely move on from this and grow from this and learn from this. Because you have men up here who care, and who care enough to change the course of this Grand Lodge so that we'll have a great future. This is not the end, this is the beginning. Right? This is the beginning of where we're going to make this Grand Lodge, some say, great again. Right? Because these men, this elected line, are great leaders, and you're going to have a great Grand Lodge with these leaders.